Hey guys, it's me Maro, and oh my god, I'm back to making drama videos or whatever. Nah, I'm just kidding. No, this video is more, so like, do you remember the whole, those, like, SH Monsterarts versus Hiya toys videos that I made, like, in the past? Well, it's time to do it again. Well, let me give you a little bit of context. So, yesterday, literally just yesterday, SH Monsterarts showed their new Biollante figure. It's the Decisive Battle version, which it's basically just a repaint of the original, or, you know, the special color version. And it's like, okay, whatever. It's the same figure we've seen multiple times already. The paint looks different, but there's nothing really, you know, surprising about it, and like, yeah. And then literally, like, under a half a day later, Hiya Toys was just like, alright, hold my beer. And they showed off their Biollante figure. And wow! This Biollante figure honestly looks just so amazing. Like, this is probably one of Hiya Toys' just best looking figures ever since, like, 91, 2019, you know, those types of figures. And so people on both sides of SH Monsterarts and Hiya Toys, and just in the middle, everyone's been kind of like talking about these two figures because the timing could not have been any more perfect. So, it is time to bring the battle that has happened so long ago in the past, with bloodshed, drama, and much more. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, I totally stole that from Christmas Cast. Welcome to another round of SH Monsterarts versus Hiya Toys. But this time, Biollante. The last time I did, like, a type of video like this, like, it was with Shimo, and it was more just me kind of going on a rant or tangent about the SH. So, with here, I think I'm going to do something, like, you know, different, just because I want to be more fair. So, you know how, like, whenever, like, I review a figure or something, I always go through, like, certain number of categories. So, it's like, you know, paint and sculpt, articulation, accessories, scale, and then price. I think, yeah, I'm gonna probably do that. Before I go any further, though, I would like to mention something because it's kind of important. SH Monsterarts has made 3 Biollante figures over the course of, you know, 12 years, or no, not 12 years, like 14 years. I think the special color version is probably the more definitive one, but because, you know, I want to be fair, I do have to mention the other 2 as well, especially the Decisive Battle version. First thing first, paint and sculpt. This is pretty close, actually. This is actually pretty close. SH Monsterarts, all 3 versions of Biollante are exactly the same. They use the same sculpt. The only thing that's really different is just the paint. Considering that, like, the special color version is, like, the best looking one, that definitely gets points just because, like, you know, it's, like, it's got all the, you know, the details on it, and the coloring is good. Although the orb, I would like to have seen the orb be, you know, orange. But that's where we go to the other versions, where the other versions have the orb be orange. But overall, this is, like, a very decent looking Godzilla figure. Like, my issue when it comes to, like, some SH Monsterarts figures is that they don't really look that accurate in some cases, but because Biollante was, you know, one of the first SH Monsterarts figures, because if there are some inaccuracies, which I can't really see many. However, I will say, if there are some inaccuracies, and I assume there are probably some, they could have changed it for the newer version, you know, the special color, Decisive Battle version. Speaking of the Decisive Battle version, the paint on that one kind of brings it down a little bit. It's like, sculpt-wise, figure is exactly the same, so I can't really mention that all too much, but paint-wise, the Decisive Battle version kind of looks weird. It's like a spa day. You got Biollante having, like, the makeup or, like, the white stuff on her face, and then you got the cucumbers on the face. So, yeah. If we look at Hiya Toys, though, Hiya Toys, their Biollante looks basically, like, just super accurate. I know some people have said that the head is slightly, like, squished in. Like, on both sides, like, it's kind of, like, squished in. So it's, like, it looks a little bit more narrow. That's really the only thing about it that's just inaccurate. Even then, the face, the head, it still looks really, really good, you know, from, like, most angles. But the thing that elevates it so much more is that this figure actually has like, a lot more detail than the SH. Like, for example, the vines that cover the orb in the center, and then, like, the head. Like, you know, it's actually sculpted in, and it's, like, separate vines, because on the SH, those parts are just kind of, like, molded into the body. But here, it's, like, actually, like, you know, it's like a net, basically. You know how, like, with the nets, like, you know, then they actually, like, they're, like, tangled together, and, like, they actually have that, like, detail to them that, like, sticks out? It's, the same here. And also, another thing is that this figure has 2 vines that shoot out the front, which is something that SH has never done. Like, they've never done that with any of their figures. And I think the thing that definitely elevates this so much more to looking very, very accurate, the paint. Like, the painting on some of these, you know, angles, like, I love this angle where it's like she's looking down with her mouth closed, but then, you know, there's her just, like, kind of roaring, you know, to the side. Basically, like, she's roaring, and, like, you can see all that little painted detail, like, the lighting on it as well. And considering that Hiya Toys figures always usually come out looking like this, like, in the end, like, you know, they're very close to the promos, it's very safe to say that this is basically what she's going to look like in hand. I would say that considering that SH has 3 Biollantes, and the new one kind of has some inaccuracies, I would say I would give this point to Hiya in terms of the way it looks, because it does, like, kind of have that, like, more larger feel as well with the paint. Like, it literally looks like a CGI model. So I think because of that, I'm going to give Hiya the point here, but it's very close. It is very, very close. So next thing is the articulation. Now, I know the Hiya figure is not out yet, but I can actually judge the articulation pretty easily. So we have 29 exposed joints, and based on some of these images, it looks like it has pretty decent articulation in the body. I think SH will probably have more articulation in the body because we've seen the SH figure, it can move around a lot. And considering that the head is kind of connected, or at least the jaw is connected to the vines on the Hiya figure, it may have a little bit more limited articulation than the SH. However, there is a big thing with the Hiya Toys figure that the SH didn't have. So on the SH Monsterarts figure, the vines, like, you know, the 4 main vines, they actually use ball joints, like, in, like, the segments, in which, like, you get a very decent amount of articulation. However, there were cases where people's, like, you know, figures, like, did pop off. So with Hiya Toys, what they decided to do is that they just decided to make all the vines bendy wire. So it's like, kind of think of the Skullcrawler tail. Like, you know, the Skullcrawler tail was bendy wire. It's the same thing here with Biollante. So that basically means that the vines can do pretty much anything. Like, they have unlimited range with the bendy wire. And also considering that Hiya Toys' bendy wires on their figures, like, you know, Heisei, King Ghidorah, Skullcrawler, Rodan, they've held up, like, you know, very, very well over, like, these past, like, you know, years or so. I think it's pretty safe to say that we don't really have to worry about, like, any breakage or something here. So yeah, I'm gonna easily give this point to Hiya Toys, just because, again, those vines on bendy wires, that gives us unlimited range of articulation. That gives us unlimited range. So next is accessories, and they both don't come with anything, so no one gets the point here. However, if I did have some accessories they could have came with, I mean, obviously you could have came with, like, the acid, like, breath and all that, which he is probably going to make, like, a second version of Biollante to, you know, come with the acid breath. But here's the thing. SH Monsterarts had what, since, like, 2012 to come with accessories, like, you know, an acid breath, so there's no excuse here. So next is scale. And the SH Monsterarts Biollante is around, like, 7 inches, because it's supposed to fit in the line with the 6-inch SH Monsterarts figures. And the Hiya Biollante is nearly 8 inches tall. So, like, by technicality, the Hiya is larger, SH is smaller, so I would give the point to Hiya, right? Well, here's the thing. I will hesitantly give the point to Hiya. I'll only give it to Hiya because of the next point in mind, but one thing to mention is that just because the Hiya one is larger than the SH, that doesn't mean it's, like, you know, automatically better. These two are in different, like, you know, figure scale lines. The SH is in the 6-inch scale, and the Hiya Toys is in the 7-inch scale. So, of course, the Hiya Biollante is going to be larger than the SH. That's, like, 100% going to be the case. But the only reason I'm going to be giving it to Hiya is with 2 things. It's with 2 things. one, it's the next point that's going to be coming up with the price, and two, the thing about Godzilla figures is that Godzilla is supposed to be big, right? Godzilla is supposed to be massive, gigantic. So having figures that are larger is a thing that is more preferable in the, the Godzilla community. That doesn't mean it's not wrong for liking, the SH Monsterarts figures because they're in the 6-inch scale. When Godzilla comes to mind, it's more preferable to have like a figure that's like larger. Like the amount of people that are thirsting over that 2014 like 12-inch NECA figure, like it makes sense. It's a large figure. It's a large Godzilla figure. Godzilla's supposed to be large. So this being like a centerpiece, like this Hiya Biollante, it makes like perfect sense why it would be, because it's a large figure. It's a large kaiju. So yeah, I'm gonna hesitantly give Hiya the point here, but it's not really that much of a competition just because, again, it's more on the subjective side of things of the scale. Because like with everything else, like it's pretty like easy to tell like what makes a thing better. But with the scale, it's more just like on the side of what you like, because these two, they scale very well into the rest of their, the Godzilla line that they're from. But now it's time to finally move on to the final round, that being the price. And first we're going to start with SH, because SH has had, 3 Biollante figures. The first Biollante figure was in the 200 to 250 range, while the second one was more into the 300 range. And this new Decisive Battle version is also in the $300 range. So if we average it out, we get more around the line of like 275 to 260 or something. But then, like, since we have 2 300s, we gotta account for that as well. So it's more around the range of like $280. $300 for this figure. I can kind of get it. It's a big figure. It's got, lots of material in it. It's got, some lighting in it. Like, there's actually... I completely forgot to mention this with the painting and sculpting. But there's actually, like, some, like, mechanics in the SH where, like, the orb in the center can actually light up. The Hiya doesn't have that. It only uses, like, paints and all that, which, it makes sense because it's not, like, the Hiya Plus line. Basically, with the SH Biollante, it's got quite a bit going for it. It's, large. It's got a lot of materials. It uses some, like, mechanics, like lighting and all that. It's, it's overall just like, it's a big Godzilla figure. It's a big Godzilla character, so obviously it's going to be more expensive than the other figures. $300, though, is still quite a bit. I will say that. It is quite a bit. It's not like, outrageous or something like that. It's not like Legion prices of outrageous. Like, if this figure is $500, then there's no way. So now if we compare that to the Hiya Biollante, the Hiya Biollante is actually in the 150 to 180 price range, which is nearly half the price of the SH. And in places where I buy my Hiya figures like Calcus Toys, it's now 150 with a $15 shipping, which is crazy. So this thing is basically like half the price of this one. So it's like when you look at the price, it kind of explains why like I gave the scale point to Hiya, because the Hiya figure, since it's larger, it uses a lot more materials than the SH. That means that the Hiya one, it makes 100% sense why I would, I would give the point to Hiya. It's larger and it's less expensive. This does mean, though, that this is the most expensive Hiya Toys figure, but it makes sense because, again, this thing is going to be massive. I don't even know where I would fit it in my room. Actually, I do have one place where I could fit it, but that's the only place where I can fit it. So if we look at the end results, the Hiya Toys figure comes out with 4 points, and the SH has none, basically. However, with some of these points, it did come very close, like the paint and, the sculpt, and, the scale. Like, those definitely came pretty close, like with the SH. Listen, I could have been like an asshole or something, and I could have just said, oh no, the Hiya is 100% better. It's like 1,000,000% better. That's not really the point of this video. This video is more just like comparing what I can see here. Because like I have my own personal thoughts on this, this new Hiya Toys figure, but I don't want to use my personal thoughts to like, further like shove my, like the objectiveness I want to talk about in this video. Because like, I'll save it for when I actually get to the review in like a year from now, but I've got a lot to talk about with this figure in my personal like point of view. One thing that I have noticed with this new Hiya Biollante though is that this is kind of the turning point in Godzilla figure collecting. So, before the Hiya Biollante figure came out, and like before, other stuff was shown, there's been kind of a war going on with SH Monsterarts and Hiya Toys figures. When it's like, I don't really see why. I'm not talking about people who, like Monsterarts, like, people who want to get Monsterarts because like they think they look cool or something like that. I mean, like, people who really like Monsterarts. And when I mean, like, really, really like, I mean, like, the meat riding kind of like. I will admit there are people who do collect Hiya Toys figures that also do the same, but it's definitely a lot more apparent with people who like Monsterarts. Like, I think it's perfectly okay to get whatever figure that you want to get. Like, if you like Monsterarts, like, any of the Monsterarts figures, and, you just like it in your own personal opinion, that's completely fine. Like, if you're happy getting these figures, then, like, I would want you to be happy. I would definitely want you to be happy. Same thing goes for, Hiya Toys figures. If you want to collect the Hiya Toys figures, because that's what makes you happy, then you should be happy by collecting the Hiya Toys figures. Like, overall, it's fine to like whatever figure that you want to like. However, my problem comes when you start taking your opinion and you start shoving it into other people's faces, and also you start trying to act like you know what you're talking about and using your opinions on the objective side of you. Opinions are subjective. I have my own opinions on the SH Biollante, and I have my own opinions on the Hiya Biollante. I do like, aspects of, the original SH and, like, the special color version, and I do like aspects of the Hiya one. But that doesn't mean I can't, notice the problems or, the stuff that is good about them. If I really wanted to, like, meat ride SH, I could just say, like, oh, well, the Hiya one, like, the head is inaccurate, so it's, like, bad. Like, there's been people who have been lying about, these SH Monsterarts and Hiya Toys figures, like, both good and bad. Like, praising one, but, neglecting the stuff about the other, or, the other way around. Again, it's perfectly fine to like a figure, but when you start taking your opinions and start shitting on the other side and saying stuff that is just, like, completely wrong, and, like, hypocritical, and, saying it in a very condescending way, and saying it in ways that is, like, very dickish, or literally, replying to every single, like, comment that, like, someone has made or whatever, and just to shit on, the figure that they like, that's not good. That is not good. And, like, it's been really kind of, like, annoying because, like, I don't really like seeing people just, like, be really, really harsh on these types of figures when it's like they don't deserve it, or it's just completely invalid. As much as I love Hiya Toys, like, as a, company and Godzilla figure line, I have mentioned my problems with their, figures many times over the years. Like, their lack of accessories, or, the fact that, some of their joints are, like, very tight, and, people have had, breakage on their figures. And just because, like, one figure, like, is bad, or, one figure is inaccurate, that doesn't mean that all other figures are going to be the same way. And it's been, like, really, really, like, apparent with, like, a lot of Hiya Toys figures and SH Monsterarts figures, but it's been so apparent with the new Biollante figures that have been shown yesterday. It is so apparent. Like, the things that people have been saying about, like, the new Hiya Biollante, saying that, like, the price is outrageous, or, the fact that the head sculpt is slightly inaccurate means that it's, like, horrible or shit looking, and it's, like, it's wrong to like it. That's... no. Because Hiya Toys figures have always been, under half the price of their SH counterparts, there's been lots of, discussions and lots of hate towards the SH figures because of, their prices. When you have a figure like this that has a lot of issues, like paint issues, ball joints popping off, or, figures that, like, are exactly the same with bad paint, and only, like, like one kind of big accessory being double the price of the original, I can understand completely why people would be upset with the SH Monsterarts prices. I'm not as mad with, like, the new SH Biollante, just because, again, I completely get it. It's a larger figure, it's, it's got a lot of material, so it makes sense why it would be $300. However, people who are defending SH Monsterarts and saying that the Hiya Toys figure is outrageous for being $250 to $280, they have to remember that Biollante is a big, big kaiju. It is like the most massive kaiju in the entire Godzilla franchise. Biollante as a character is going to be the most massive. Is it as tall as King Ghidorah? No, King Ghidorah is taller. Is it as long as Tiamat? No, it's not as long as Tiamat. But the actual, like, thickness and the actual, like, the body of it, it is massive. It uses so much material. Like, that figure is going to be heavy. And another thing to remember is that the Hiya Biollante is going to be larger than the SH, which means that we're having a figure that is nearly 8 inches tall, using a lot of plastic, a lot of material. Yeah, no shit, it's going to be more expensive than all other Hiya figures. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that because Biollante is the largest Godzilla character, like, by sheer mass, that means that the Hiya Biollante is probably the most expensive we will see a Hiya Toys figure. If the most largest Hiya Toys figure is under $200, that's fine. It's safe to say that Space Godzilla is going to be probably $100 or maybe even cheaper because he's not that much larger than Godzilla. Other characters like King Caesar, Rodan, Mothra, Batra, all those characters, they're probably not going to be as expensive as Biollante because they're smaller characters. Just because Biollante had a, price increase compared to some other figures, that doesn't mean that all other Hiya Toys figures are going to be $150. Seeing people who defend SH Monsterarts on levels like Charlie Kirk or something, it's just embarrassing to see them complain about the price of the Hiya Toys figure when it's basic logic that it's this expensive. Hell, I would say it's like more cheaper than what it should be. Again, this figure is larger than the SH, and it's going to have like more articulation, and considering how Hiya Toys figures are, it's going to be very durable. I could see this easily going for $250. Hell, if this price was $300 and the SH was $150, that is way more like reasonable. It's kind of crazy that this new Biollante figure from Hiya Toys is nearly half the price. I'm defending Hiya Toys here because this is literally, objectively, a really good thing. Like, for example, I work at my college, right? I work at college. I mean, I'm not working right now just because summer break. But when I go to work at college, my paycheck is usually just under or over $200. So if I really wanted to, I could just have like one of my paychecks, just be centered around this one Biollante figure and still have probably enough money to, get past like the week or something. I'm not saying use your paychecks for Godzilla figures. I'm just trying to make a point. But when it comes to like the SH Monsterarts Biollante, that thing is like $300. So it's like even with one paycheck that I have, I can't buy it. And since the Hiya Toys figure is like objectively better because of like, what is like shown based on the promos, it's pretty reasonable why people would prefer this figure over the SH. Again, the figure isn't out yet, so it's like, a little bit quick to judge. But considering how most Hiya figures have always been very, very accurate to their promos, I can only think of like a couple examples like 2014, Evolved, and in some places the Heisei. But just because those figures are inaccurate, that doesn't mean that this figure will be. Considering that this figure is going to be larger, it's going to be the largest Hiya Toys figure, I'm pretty sure we're going to get a lot of detail on there. I've also seen that people are saying that the Hiya Toys figures are like cheap garbage in comparison to the SH Monsterarts figures, in which, how? I get it, they're technically using a cheaper plastic, which makes them, more affordable and all that, but having a cheaper plastic doesn't mean it's bad. The durability on Hiya Toys figures have always been, like, top-notch. You would really have to be, like, an asshole just to, like, try to, like, pry apart a figure like that. And even when a figure does come apart, it's very, very rare. The amount of, like, joints and stuff that have fallen off on SH figures is like so much more than Hiya Toys figures. So I don't understand the idea that, oh, well, they use a cheaper plastic, therefore they're like, you know, their overall figure line is just cheaper in general. It's like, what about that makes it cheap? Like, what about it? Because, like, if they're using a cheaper plastic and it's like that makes the figures bad, well, lots of people are saying that, you know, the figures are nice to handle. Lots of people are saying that these figures are accurate. Lots of people are saying that these figures are overall really, really good because of everything, like, about them. Accuracy, feel-wise, price, those are the main three things when it comes to quality of a figure. And if, for the majority, most part of it, the Hiya Toys figures have been very nice quality for a lot of people, and that is, like, the major majority, because, like, you know, we see things like statistics-wise, I don't think them using cheaper plastic makes them bad. Objectively, yes, Hiya Toys does use a cheaper plastic, but, like, in my personal opinion, and most other people's, like, opinions as well, I don't see how them being cheap plastic makes them garbage. Most, like, almost everyone says they're nice to handle. The people who are saying they're not nice to handle are the same people that I've mentioned earlier. For, you know, all of you people who are, you know, just buying figures just because you like a way a figure looks, be careful around these types of people on the internet or online just in general, because they're... I've mentioned it before. They're condescending, they have a very, very large ego, and some of them are even really bad people. And I mean bad in the sense of there's serious stuff behind them. However, if you're someone who is, like, you know, more on the side of, like, looking at a figure or something in a more objective point of view, then that's completely fine as well. The only thing I have to say is, please don't let your personal opinions of these specific figures get in the way of you looking at what makes a figure good and what makes a figure bad. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention as well, the Hiya Toys figure comes out in next year of Q3, but considering that we might get some sculpt changes, it might come out a little bit later. That's another kind of meh thing about Hiya Toys, is like, they kind of make their figures come out, like, you know, a long time after they're, like, promoed or whatever. I can still fully understand why people are upset about, you know, the release schedules of Hiya Toys. This figure is really, really a turning point when it comes to Godzilla figures. Not only is it, like, you know, really, really good looking, and, you know, it's for a really good price and all that, and it's really large, but it's also bringing out all the shitheads in the community, all the people who think they know everything, all the people who are giant assholes, and honestly, I think after this, we might see a divide between, like, the community or something between these types of people, because it's now becoming a lot more apparent after this figure has come out. I would just try to follow, like, you know, what figures you like, and just try not to listen to these types of people. Just like what you want to like what you, like, enjoy what you want to enjoy. Just don't be an asshole to people. Just don't be an asshole to people, and just steer clear of the people who are assholes. But yeah, that's about it for this video. It's a bit of a long video, I know, but this has been the third installment of Hiya versus SH Monsterarts or whatever. Yeah, that's about it for this video. Thank you all for watching and sticking around, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you later.